All right, so remember, this is a continuation. We in part one, we really talked about where that difference quotient formula comes from. And we did a few examples. Remember, we did two linear and then two quadratic. And the one in your test, 3, which is, and remember, next week's is the last full week. And then the next week after that is the last week of school. So you have Monday, Tuesday, and Tuesday's the last day of class, and then the Thursday's your final. So Monday is test 3, the week after next, okay? So it's kind of quite a bit of things going on. All right, so this is going to be on your test 3 on your final, so it is going to be quadratic, just like I mentioned yesterday. And I will give you the I will give you the difference quotient. But what is the difference quotient without looking? Okay, f of x plus h minus f of x. So that's the difference part. The quotient part is what operation? Division. So you divide by h. All right. So you saw where that came from. And now you just got to use it. Now, when doing this, it's a good idea to do this into steps. So the first thing you should find is what part? First thing you should find is what part? F of x plus h. So when you get that worksheet in a little while, make sure you do it like I'm doing this. So you're going to say step 1 is to find this part here, f of x plus h. All right, now remember what that means. That means where we see the variable x in your function, you're going to substitute what expression? X plus h. So I get f of x plus h equals, now you got to be careful here because this x squared, what's that coefficient? -1. So this is really a -1 times in parentheses, what do I put? X plus h, and that's being squared, plus 5 times what? X plus h, and then minus 2. Okay? Now, what is it you got to do with this part now? You see that x plus h, you got to figure out what that is, that x plus h squared. But it's always going to be x plus h squared. So if you did about 4 or 5 of them, you will already know what that x plus h squared is. What's that x plus h squared?
Wait, what is the x plus h?
It's x squared plus 2xh plus h squared. All right, if you don't remember it, then just work it out. So x plus h squared okay, x times x is x squared. The outer is xh. The inner is also xh. And the last is h squared. Combine like terms, you get x squared. And then how many xh's are there? Okay, so I get 2xh and then plus h squared. Okay, so that's this right here. But that trinomial has to be multiplied by what? -1. All right, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and distribute the 5. So that becomes plus 5x plus 5h minus 2. And then what's the next step for step 1? Distribute the -1, so I get negative x squared. What else? Minus 2xh minus h squared, and then plus 5x plus 5h minus 2. So it's your step 1. Now, remember at that point, and you got to compare it to what we did in the part 1. And so remember at that point you would combine like terms, but when we find f of x plus h, at this point there's nothing to combine. They're not like terms. None of these terms are alike. So once you find that's step 1, this little part here, then what's the next step? What's step 2? Is to figure out what that numerator is, right? So you're going to say f of x plus h, which I just found, that's all of this, minus x squared minus 2xh minus h squared plus 5x plus 5h minus 2. But then you got to subtract f of x. But you got to remember that you're subtracting a polynomial. You're subtracting more than one term, so you got to put that in parentheses. So what do I put in parentheses? What's f of x? Negative x squared plus 5x minus 2. That is f of x right here. That goes here. Minus f of x. And then all that's being divided by h. All right, now you just simplify step 2, and that will be your answer. So get rid of the parentheses, distribute the negative. What does the numerator become? Minus 2xh minus h squared plus 5x plus 5h minus 2, and then plus x squared minus 5x plus 2, all divided by h. And remember, at this point in the numerator, every term that doesn't have an h in it should cancel out with something. So negative x squared, there should be a positive x squared, so that's 0. That has an h, that has an h. 5x, there should be a negative 5x, and there is. A negative 2 and a positive 2. So every term that's left has the variable h in that term, has that factor of h. So a negative 2xh minus h squared plus 5h, and that's all being divided by h. Now, you don't leave the answer like this because you know you can simplify this. So each of these terms is being divided by h. So if you need to rewrite as 3 separate fractions, then you do that. So negative 2xh divided by h minus h squared divided by h plus 5h divided by h. And then when I reduce, these h's divide out. So this becomes negative 2x. This becomes minus h. And this term becomes 5. So that is your difference quotient for that function. So f of x plus h minus f of x divided by h for that function is what? Right. Now, for you, it really doesn't mean anything, but it is needed for next semester, that idea. So it does have something to do with derivatives, with finding the slope of a tangent line at a point. All right, so just remember that on your test, you are going to have a quadratic one on test 3. Yes.